Tonight, we'd like you to meet a colored boy whose amazing fingers have been cutting a rhythmic, blazing path to success over the airwaves for the past 3 years now.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the great, the incomparable Oscar Peterson.
Oh, he's superb.
He's just one of the outstanding pianists in the history of our music.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
You couldn't believe a human being could play like him.
That's the main reaction. The reunion of what I have to call the original trio with Ray Brown and Herbie Ellis was a very gratifying thing in every way possible. The trio that grew out of Jazz at the Phil, I think, is the best trio in the world.
Down a little bit more, it'd be easier. Bring it down just a little bit more. That's it, yeah.
Here's your guitar, Herb.
There hasn't been another group that's been away from each other 20 years. Can still come on the scene and raise as much hell as we raise all over the world. It may sound egotistical, it is. I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud of it because for the simple reason that it proves there was a bond there and there is a bond there that other groups were not able to achieve.
Who's in charge of this?
My man, move this amp back a little bit.
There was a bond that is very hard to describe. We would breathe together. We would think things out together. We would agonize over things together. We'd laugh over things together. We would play jokes on each other. We would test each other.
Well, I mean, they changed that. You may have to bring it up.
Well, when the people come in, yeah, you have to wait and see. Well, you just let us know if you need to.
No, I think that's, well, you know.
Yeah.
Herb Ellis, a Texas lad who has learned to play the blues. Ray Brown, a man who doesn't know how really gifted he is. This past summer was a quartet with Jeff Hamilton, in all fairness. A man who is very easy to love musically and certainly personally.
It probably has exceeded what I thought it would be like. He's one of the greatest musicians of all time.
He's a complex person. He's very, very, very bright. Very bright. Has a photographic memory if he chooses to make use of it. You know, he can remember everything. And he's very, very giving, very loving person, very giving.
I think he's able to get his emotions out, whatever they are, you know, if it's tragedy or comedy or whatever, he gets them out, you know. We all have problems. As soon as you get on that stage, they all go away.
And let's welcome a fellow Canadian, Dr. Oscar Peterson.
this is where it all began for me, Montreal.
Here's Oscar Peterson with his version of Chinatown.
Montreal was known as a city of good times. It was a liberal atmosphere. The alcohol was flowing freely, even during the Prohibition era. So musicians liked to come here to work. The added attraction for black musicians was that the prejudice here, while it existed, was a lot less noticeable than in the United States. So black musicians could work on the same bandstand as a white musician comfortably. The Second World War brought a lot of business to town because this was a staging center for the army, so there were a lot of soldiers in town. And the nightclub industry and the dance halls were just hopping. So through the 1940s up until the early 1950s, this was really the golden era.
Montreal in those days, you want to get laid, there was a place to get laid. I was a fighter. I loved to fight. See how many guys I can knock out in a night. So I used to end up around St. Lawrence Street, St. Denis, the Bouillon, keep my knuckles happy. If you wanted to hear some music, you had all kinds of music. And this here went on all night.
In the middle of all of this, I started doing radio broadcasts. I won the Ken Sobel Amateur Show. And, you know, I became a sort of a mini celebrity, certainly in my classroom and even in the school.
Friends, tonight we'd like you to meet a colored boy whose amazing fingers have been cutting a rhythmic, blazing path to success over the airwaves for the past 3 years now. Tell me, boy, how many hands you got?
Just two, Mr. Davis, just two, but I like to make them work hard.
You're not kidding. Tell me, Oscar, you're still going to school, aren't you?
That's right. My folks would tan my hide if I missed a day.
Your dad would have his hands full there.
That's what you say. My pop ain't no pygmy either.
Well,
I found a lot of those announcements in my early days. I wouldn't say they're patronizing, I'd say they're insulting. At the time when I heard them, I had a goal in mind. I can't think of one black artist I heard on local radio at the time. So, no, I wouldn't allow them to call me a nigger, obviously, but whatever they used in those days, I overlooked because I wanted to get to where I had some clout. That was the sole reason for that. Because there's no use you taking on the African army with a penknife. You know, if I go over there, I'm going to go over there with a howitzer, possibly a bomb.
Our 6'2", 18-year-old, now 19-year-old colored boy well, he's definitely taken Canada by storm as the greatest thing in barrel house, boogie-woogie, and beat me daddy 8 to the bar since Mr. Steinway started making those pianos.
So I used to wander off, tell my mother I was going to a youth center, and I'd go off to Westmount City Hall, where the Victoria Hall, where Oscar was playing. But I was always taken with, first of all, his playing, but also when he would improvise, how, you knew he had a classical training because it was incredibly beautiful.
I think that is a particular gift that is hard to describe, but you don't forget. You meet some people and you never forget them, even though you don't know them very well. Well, you just heard Oscar once, and I can remember, the notes would stick in your head for a long time.
I got permission to use the piano in the auditorium at Montreal High. That was the best way to have a bunch of girls come down, because they all come down in lunch hour to hear me play, So I became like the guy, My dad explained what he wanted from me when I came to him and said, I no longer am interested in high school studies. When I should be doing algebra, I'm writing parts for the trio or whatever, piano, and composing tunes. I remember he used to look at me and said, there are a lot of jazz piano players out there. I said, yeah. He said, you're just going to be another one of them? I didn't know what he meant. And then he finally said, I can't let you leave high school to be a jazz piano player. If you're going to be the best, I'll let you go. But you have to be the best. There is no second best. According to Dad's expectations, this is the man I would have to measure up to.
Several months ago, I was invited to dinner at Quincy Jones' house, and Oscar was there, and it gave me a great opportunity to ask Oscar Peterson, who was one of my mentors, about Art Tatum. Because my feeling has always been that both Nat Cole and Art Tatum have been big influences on Oscar's style. And I mentioned to him that every time I hear Art Tatum play, whenever I put a record on Art Tatum, the next thing I think is, I wonder if they need any more electrical engineers in the world, because I'm ready to give up playing the piano, you know. And I wanted to ask him, did he have any experience with meeting Art Tatum? So he says he remembers that when he was a kid, that he was kind of a young hotshot piano player, and he was kind of cocky too at the same time. And so one day his father said to him,
"Pretty good piano player." I said, "Yeah, let me hear him." He put on the thing. I said, "Don't give me that. That's for a man. That's two men." He said, No. George said, "No. It's one man." I couldn't believe it. I didn't touch a piano for a month. I eventually recovered from the trauma. My first step was to join a big band.
Johnny Holmes was a white trumpet player. He decided to put together his own big band. And it became really the best-known big band in Montreal.
We had a couple of close encounters, if you will, and because of my being black, the only black in the band. And strange as it seems, I can probably say it now, they probably could have been averted if we had a few more blacks in the band. But when you're the only lone figure of that race in a band, you're noticed. And I remember we were due to play an engagement at the Ritz-Carlton. And they found out, when I say they found out, someone brought it to their attention that I was in the band, and they weren't going to have this. I was thinking at the time, depending on Johnny's handling of the situation, I was seriously thinking of quitting. Because if he had said, well, we can't play there without Oscar, or we'll replace you for that night, I was out of that band like in a flash. As it turned out, he had either some relatives or some connections. I was glad to go in and break the rule, if you will. I figured it might help somewhere down the line. But I hated them making concessions to me. Because after all, it wasn't as if I was totally unknown in Canada by then. So, you know.
They got double billing eventually. It used to be called the Johnny Holmes Orchestra featuring Oscar Peterson. It eventually became that kind of promotion. And the fans used to love him as well. So Oscar really had this wonderful, comfortable home. And it was from there that he moved to the Alberta Lounge, where he was really out on his own, playing in a trio without a band around him.
This is many years ago when I started with the very first trio in Montreal. A man would come up from Georgia year after year to hear me play, and would insist on meeting me one year on his vacation. And I said, "Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you." And I put my hand out, and his response was, "I love your playing." He said, "but I could never shake hands with a nigger." A lot of musicians were trying to do it, breaking the color barrier. But it was a promoter, Norman Granz, who did more than anyone to break it down. He just refused to accept it.
The story of how Norman Granz discovered Oscar Peterson in Montreal has become quite a legend in this town. Oscar Peterson had been playing at the Alberta Lounge at the head of his own trio for a couple of years in Montreal. He was quite the talk of the town. He was well known and well liked as a musician. Norman Granz had come up to Montreal on business, and the taxi radio was tuned to a live transmission from the Alberta Lounge, which was not uncommon in those days to have radio remotes from nightclubs.
And I heard this fantastic piano player, but I assumed it was a disc jockey playing records. And he said, no, he said, it's live. He said, it's Alberta Lounge, it's Oscar Peterson. So at that point I said, well, forget the airport, let's go back there.
remember the first thing I saw were those, I don't know what they call them, buckskin shoes, white with the sort of tan stripe across them. All the college kids were wearing them. And he was known, that was one of his trademarks. Look, I saw these shoes. So I sort of visually followed, my eyes went up the shoes, straight up the pants, and then I looked up and there, of course, the next trademark was the eyebrows, right there. Huge eyebrows. And it was Norman.
I suggested that since my show, Jazz at the Philharmonic, was opening at Carnegie in a few weeks, that he might come down as my guest, and then I could maybe put him on as a surprise artist, in effect calling him up from the audience.
The audience said, we're going to have a special guest after the intermission. So he called me up and he said, I thought I was going to use Ray Brown, the whole rhythm section, Ray and Buddy Rich. He said, I want them to hear you. You just go out and play. I said, oh, wait a minute, Norman. I haven't been playing solo piano. I've been playing group piano. He said, nah. He was almost adamant until finally he said, okay, you can have Ray Brown, but that's it. I don't want anything to distract from what you're doing. And by the time it was over, the first thing was over, they were screaming and some of them were standing up and so forth. And I guess it was then I got the signal, well, I guess you can stay on stage. It was a dream come true, more than a dream. It was a fantasy. And to be suddenly thrown in with them, I'm working with them. It was like, wow. And if anything sustained me thinking about leaving the comforts of Montreal and the Montreal music scene was the fact that I knew I could play. And I had carefully done some homework on various players that were dominating the jazz scene at that time. And to put it very figuratively, I kind of figured they were in range. You can't possibly travel with jazz to the Philharmonic without learning something. Roy Eldridge, Dizzy, Ella, and the gang taught me many things. Not only about playing music, but about living life. To me, this was serious business, but to them, it was just another gig. I remember walking into a studio one day, and there was Dizzy, stretched out on the floor, taking a nap before the session.
So I told the guy, don't tell Oscar I was already there. Just tell him where the studio is. So Oscar came into the studio and he opened the door and he looked and saw me laying on the floor with my horn across my chest. He said, ain't no need of doing that, ain't no need of that, I'm ready, But he hadn't warmed up. So I'd been there for about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, and warming up and everything. So he said, ain't no need of doing that. said, I'm ready now. I said, okay, first number we played. Forgot the name of the first number, something real fast. I said, okay, first number. 1, 2, 3, 4. He had to play the introduction. But I was ready.
But I also learned what a privilege it was to play with someone like Ella Fitzgerald.
It's just a happy thing when we're all working together. You know, there's no you better than I am, or I'm better than you. We all go out for each other and to make the show. And I think that's what has been so successful with the Jazz and Philharmonic tours that we did, because we were all for each other.
Oscar tries in every situation to find the humor of it. I mean, he's a great practical joker. And he fell right in with the attitude of Jazz at the Phil, because my whole idea of music then was it should be happy music. I mean, you should go to a jazz concert and be happy.
We play some horrible tricks on each other. And we survived them all. They taped the piano keys on me one time with clear tape and taped the front edge of the keys so I didn't realize it, and then ran up on stage, said, come on, we're on. And I ran up, and Ray said, hey, how about whatever the tune was, he called some tune that involved me right away. And of course I started playing, it was like death. Ray Brown and I were close as a duo, but I had always admired Nat King Cole and his trio format of bass, guitar, and piano. When Herbie Ellis joined us, we really became a close-knit unit. Our friendship became even tighter when we were criticized for having a white person in our group.
Well, it made me very proud that Oscar, he hired on the basis of your musicality and what kind of person you were. And he would tell him, he made no bones about it, you know. He said, he's my guitar player. He's the guy I want. I don't care if he's black or white. It wouldn't matter with him.
I would get hate letters in Chicago about Herbie Ellis being in the group. You know, from both races, by the way, just so everybody gets their rightful recognition. You know, I'd get hate letters about what is that white cat doing in the band? He can't play nothing. You know, he's white. Whatever that had to do with it, I don't know. I'm black, and, you know, I think I can play, and I'm the color as in, I think if you bleached me, I'd still be able to play the way I play right now.
want me to walk here or not? You want me to walk here or not?
That trio rehearsed more than any band I've ever been in my life. You know, I think Oscar, who loved Nat Cole, and Nat Cole had a trio with just piano, bass, and guitar. But he carried it much further. At times, we sounded like Count Basie, you know? I mean, he would want it to sound like a full orchestra. And then at times it sounded like a small group. So it took a lot of preparation and work to achieve that.
Our first concert was always Hartford, Connecticut. That was the sort of sorted out concert. And then we'd head into New York for Carnegie. And from there on it was on, and we used to play as many as 60 cities.
None of those artists needed me, I needed them for the show. But that relationship with Oscar, which was kind of special, I think blossomed when we came to Europe, because that was foreign area totally for Oscar. America, he had some ideas what it was like.
Perhaps the real star of jazz at the Philharmonic was Norman Granz. He took jazz to heights that weren't imagined a few years before. We traveled around the world, and what Norman, in fact all of us really wanted, was some respectability for jazz. We wanted to take it out of the back alley clubs and give it some dignity as an art form. And in Europe, genuine appreciation.
In those days, American musicians weren't allowed to play here. There was a big disaster in this country, and Norman Granz decided to let Jazz and Philharmonic come in and do a relief concert for the victims. And the first American musicians that came on stage was Oscar with a trio. It was the first American musician I'd ever heard in the flesh. And of course it was like being fired out of a cannon. I never heard anything like that. You heard it on records, you've seen it on television, it's not the same. To actually see this man doing his stuff in front of you, was unforgettable. That was nearly 40 years ago. I've seen more things happen with Norman on tour. I think it was in France, just after the war. We all went to this bar with Ella, and there were a couple of Marines in there. And most of the guys were at the bar. A couple were sitting with Ella, and they started making remarks about niggers or darkies or whatever they were talking about. And it was a very moving thing. The bar was quite crowded, but the people understood what they were saying. And that this wasn't instigated by the guys from Jazz at Phil or any of us. Everybody to a person got up from the lounge and went to the bar and left these two Marines sitting by themselves. So, you know, in a lot of ways, Europe was a lot hipper than many of the Westerners were. Those Marines that we ran into served as a reminder that things hadn't changed too much in the United States. Here's one American I met on the plane who wasn't like that. Chief Justice Earl Warren of the United States Supreme Court playing chess with Dizzy. At the time, he was leading the American civil rights struggle.
You can realize what it means to be black and in the United States, in any field.
I got in a cab once, and somebody stepped in front of me and then used the famous words, "Get out of the road, nigger." And I just fought. I pulled him back out of the cab and knocked him out.
the southern United States was almost impossible to travel in for various performers because, you know, you're under pressure, you're under threat sometimes. And Norman decided to use JATP as a wedge to break into a lot of these segregated hotels, restaurants, you name it, motels, whatever it was, and concert halls.
Well, they were the pioneers. I remember a lot of the circumstances myself, you know, leaving Seattle and going down south and having to get used to seeing two drinking fountains, you know, for white and colored, waiting rooms for the bus stations, the trailway buses, for white and colored, the hotels, you know, there was hardly any place to stay. The venues that you play had the general admission for $3.50 for general admission, and $1.50 for white spectators who used to sit up in the balcony and watch the black people dance. Unfortunately, it got to be just a common thing. You know, you just got used to it.
What really happened was I was on stage, and after I got to about the third song, next thing I know, the spotlight had me blinded because the stage auditorium was completely dark, as you know, when you're working. And next thing I know, I was hit around the ankles, and I was sort of tripped. I guess he was sort of reaching over the footlights because he ran.
Well, you're talking simply about racism. I mean, I don't think anyone, and this can be a very dogmatic statement, but I stand by it. I don't think anyone really gets into jazz, not as a player, I'm talking about the public, and understands what it's about and understands what the musicians are about without understanding racism.
But the hurting part would be when we'd pull up and there was no way, hotel-wise. Right? The bus would stop at the big white hotel with the grand windows and the doorman. And I can remember a couple of doormen looking at the bus like, they're not going to get off here. They're not planning to come in here, this sort of thing, you know. And all of the white members of the troupe would get off, and they were really embarrassed and hurt, you know. Like Flip would say, well, pal of mine, I'm not going to see you for a day or two. We got a couple of days off. Maybe I'll come over there. And I said, no, you don't have to come over because we're going to the other side of the tracks.
But playing with Oscar and Ray, I always stayed at the Black Hotel with them, and most of the white guys would stay at the White Hotel, and the black would stay at the Black. But I always, I couldn't find any reason not to, you know. I wanted to be with them anyway, and I would have just felt I couldn't handle it.
It was Dallas or Houston, one of the two. And of course, Norman ushered everybody out of the airport and saying, well, look, we'll bring the bags. He said, Ella, you get in that cab. Up comes one of the big cops with the big guns. You know, they always seem to wear those big 6-shooters or whatever the hell it is they wear. And he barred her from the cab. He said, she's not getting in that cab. Norman said, she's getting in that cab. She has a right to get in that cab. She's getting in that cab. And he pulled this big, whatever it was, gun out and stuck it in Norman's navel and said, ain't one of these niggas getting in any of these cabs. He said, if they do, I'm going to kill you. He said, I'll tell you something, I hate you worse than I hate these niggas. That was the whole philosophy. And Norman went over and opened the cab and said, come on, Ella. And of course, Ella was destroyed. She was shaking. She didn't want to go. She said, no, he's going to, he said, get in the cab. He's not going to do anything. And the cop didn't do anything. Boy, you could see him seething, you know. He was just like livid that this nigger lover, as he put it, was beating him.
So I wouldn't repeat some of the things that a couple of the fellows said, but those are the things that you experience.
I think it was in Houston. They came backstage, the police, and arrested Ella and Roy Eldridge and a whole bunch that were back in the dressing rooms playing dice and gambling between themselves for fun. And they said that was against the law, and they took them all down to jail.
But we were breaking through, and white America was at least beginning to recognize talent.
The Nat King Cole Show with Norman Granz and his jazz at the Philharmonic.
In 1944 was my privilege to found jazz at the Philharmonic. No one would have guessed at that time, least of all myself, the extent to which these concerts would grow. It's been a fabulous experience. It's been my life. At that first concert of jazz greats, our piano soloist was Nat King Cole.
Thank you very much, Norman. You know, I'd like to let our listeners know before we begin that this is the first television appearance of jazz at the Philharmonic. And that
I'd have to agree that Norman Granz made more than just a musical statement. He also made a tremendous political statement. They have yet to honor Norman Granz for all the things that he did, I might add, and for all of the gut-wrenching, nervous, apprehensive evenings we had to spend as members of his troupe, wondering whether we were going to get out of those places alive at times. I don't think we should be awarded. I think he should be awarded. And if you look at the musical end of it, it becomes even more ludicrous.
And now here's Nat with the Oscar Peterson Trio to do the jazz classic, Sweet Lorraine. Along with Oscar's piano, you hear Ray Brown on bass, Herb Ellis on guitar, and Coleman Hawkins will join them on the second chorus.
Now I've just found joy. I'm as happy as a baby boy with another brand new choo-choo toy. When I met my sweet Lorraine, 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 she's got a pair of eyes that are brighter than the summer skies. When you see them, you'll realize why I love my sweet Lorraine.
How can I explain the gains we've made without thinking of the price we paid? We all have our weaknesses. I learned that. My first shock came when my mentor from Montreal, Steve Wade, died from overabuse. You see, drugs and alcohol were taking a terrible toll on some of the best jazz musicians we had. Many of them were friends of mine. Billie Holiday was tragic because Billie Holiday could not escape drugs that followed her all her life. Charlie Parker, who I don't believe reached his zenith before he died. Then finally I got mad, you know, when I saw the destruction that was spawning all over the place. People that I really loved who were not only going to jail, they were getting very, very sick where they couldn't save them. And I saw a young piano player who shall remain nameless outside of Birdland one night, years ago. And I said, you can't do this, you know. He asked me for $2. Started off with 25, we got down to 2. And I said, you know, you're gonna kill yourself. You gotta stop this. I'm not gonna give you the money. I know what you're gonna do, and I'm gonna give it to you. Next year I came back, dead.
I had some disastrous bouts with alcohol. I drank successfully for a few years, then it became a problem. Twice, I didn't show up for engagements, and one time I was gone and was in New York for about over a month. Nobody knew I was dead or alive.
Herbie decided the only way to beat it was to give up the road and try to put his life back together. He got married and became a session musician in LA. I had to live, so to speak, musically speaking, without Herbie Ellis. The guitar was removed from the group. It was a time of change. I could feel it not only musically, but emotionally. People were beginning to do what we had been doing for so many years. They were saying enough was enough. Too many doors had been slammed shut. Ironically, Norman tried to open one for me in the studios in LA. I had better thoughts about Canada than I had about the United States. This is my country, and I've always been comfortable here. I've always loved it. we certainly have our faults. Right in my hometown, there were demonstrations, people taking to the streets in protest. Ironically, when you think about it, musicians and performers have done this for years. You know, they've gone out on stage and worked with one another, this race with that race, you know, this type of person with that type of person, with no problems. So I guess it means that we're going to have to turn the world into a world of performers so that they understand what love is all about. The hymn to freedom was written during the upheaval years of the 60s, when it seemed like there was going to be a huge and very awful confrontation in America. I wrote it with hope because the lyrics personify exactly what I was thinking. When every man joins hands and forever sings in harmony, that's when we'll be free, because that's the essence of freedom.
From the right with their billy clubs, and from the left with their nightsticks, and some of them had tear gas, and some of them were on horses. They overran us, they knocked us down, they beat us down to the ground was bloody, and I became unconscious.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
Tired of funerals. Tired of it.
An inspirational movement that was to sweep the world. And here in Canada, that protest gained momentum. Even the politicians on Parliament Hill seemed to be listening.
We are shocked that a nation which sends troops to preserve freedom in Vietnam could not spare troops to preserve the Negroes and the friends of Negroes struggling for human liberty.
Martin Luther King wasn't just speaking to America that day. He was speaking to the whole world. And that's why the whole world listened.
And singing the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Oscar Peterson.
Oscar has never changed his standards, ever. He still does his thing, and to whatever degree anyone can say, well, he hasn't changed or he hasn't advanced or improved, it doesn't bother him.
I had to think more percussively. We went into the drum era with the trios. This turned out to be also very successful because Ed Thigpen came in on drums, and very talented percussionist, and Ray was still on bass. So that worked out happily for us.
When I joined that group, I was, in a way, in awe. I loved those two men. I loved their work, and I had such, I have a great deal of respect for them, obviously. Oscar, to me, was fighting. Although he was recognized, but not really. We didn't make a great deal of money. Obviously got the money he makes today, from that point, There was new styles of music coming in, people playing music that couldn't play anywhere, couldn't even sit on the same bandstand, but from a remunerative aspect, we're getting a fair shake. So he had to fight very hard to get, by being consistent and sticking to his guns.
But I'm a promoter, or impresario, if I want to put it nicely. So I didn't have to ask anybody if they wanted Oscar. I simply would rent the hall and do the publicity. And in effect, Oscar had another outlet for his talents.
There was a new generation tuning into a different beat. We had to fight for our audiences, and so this became the era of the jazz festivals. What we had to do was to appeal to them without losing the integrity of the music, or jazz was dead.
In many ways, it could have been the last gasp of jazz as I liked and understood it. Because he's maintained his own standard and never deviated from it, never lowered it, it finally got across to people, and to promoters particularly, that this was a permanent kind of an artist.
During this time, there were various people on Jazz at the Philharmonic that we were traveling with who commented on the trios and how much they liked them and so forth and so on. One of the people that made a comment was, believe it or not, Duke Ellington, who was always known to be an instigator. You know, he was never happy when things ran smooth. He always had an idea that would cause upheaval some kind of way. Good-naturedly, of course. And one night I came off after what I thought was one hell of a set with the trio. And he said to me, magnificent, just magnificent as usual. You know, that was Duke, you know. And he said to me, tell me something. He said, have you ever given thought to the fact that maybe there's a change? People might enjoy the caviar without the eggs and onions, meaning without the drums and the bass. And I said, oh, I thought of it, Duke. But he said, no. He said, you do more than think about it. You should place, I'm sure they want to hear you play solo piano. No. It was a challenge because after all those years with the trio, guys like Herb and Ray, they'd become almost a part of me. I had to overcome it. And when I did, it opened up a whole new dimension for me. I could play with whoever I liked and whenever I liked.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cleo Lane rejoins her husband John's due Perdido.
I look for my heart, it's Perdido. Lost it way down in Toledo. The day that fiesta started. Bolero, swayed as it played a bolero. Kissed me the listing sombrero, and that's where my heart departed.
Oscar is a grunter when he plays. And also Louis Bellson is another one who, when he played drums, also, and I thought, oh golly, you know, when I sing my one ballad, am I going to have all this going behind me? But I can't remember. I can't really remember hearing anything that that disturbed me when I was singing.
And now that jazz is receiving a complete new generation of people resuscitating its values and resuscitating its chances of survival, you can look back on those periods and say, thank God for Oscar Peterson.
Would you welcome Count Basie? People like to think that performers don't react when competition is sitting outside. That's not true. I know I've made a whole bunch of piano players think that have come to see me, you know, and I mean lovingly. This is not said for annihilation purposes. I'm not trying to annihilate anybody. But if you get in my way, musically, I'm going to try and run over you.
People stop playing when Oscar comes in the room. They say, get up from the piano. I remember Benny Carter at Ella Fitzgerald's tribute. He says, get up from the piano. Oscar is in the house. Leave the piano. And it's true. I mean, who wants to be sitting around on the piano when Oscar Peterson comes in? Find something else to do. This man is dangerous.
I mean, I come down in the morning and I sit at the piano and I play my Bach and I play my Oscar. I mean, I learn certain ways of playing. There may be other approaches to the piano. I'm not really, that interested, actually. I love what he does. I think it's extraordinary.
He's up there so far that you can't say what he is, because he does all of the things. You can catch him and he'll be doing some classical music, and you'll be saying, oh gosh, isn't that beautiful? The touch that he has, and it makes you want to sing, or makes you want to do what you're doing.
The best jazz instrumental soloist is?
See who this is. Please, thank you, darling.
All right.
Oscar Peterson, Montreal 77, Oscar Peterson.
Great musician, a man who truly has brought recognition to himself and his country. Ladies and gentlemen, who else? Oscar Peterson.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the great, the incomparable Oscar Peterson.
Because as a Canadian that left these shores, temporarily anyway, I've always wanted to feel wanted at home. I've always wanted to feel respected at home. And I've always wanted to feel honored at home.
Here they have one of their favorite sons who is probably the greatest living influence on jazz piano today.
You are now to assume the function of Chancellor of York University, to which you have been duly appointed, in which you have accepted.
It was an emotional day, because this wasn't like winning a prize. I felt it was an expression of confidence in me as a human being, and an opportunity for me to carry on that standard of excellence I've always believed in. Perhaps I'm being challenged once more to live up to it. Man has taken for granted many of the huge steps that the creative world alone has been most instrumental in bringing about, due simply, in essence, to its creative need.
Intended to be played a little quicker than that.
I wrote it for the Calgary Stampede, where they have a parade that precedes the Stampede. To have the Queen's Guards Band playing one of my compositions, March Past, is quite an honor. It's the kind of recognition I haven't always had at home.
You're going to get one or two of the band who are great fans of yours now. They come
Thank you.
How are you?
Enjoyed it. Great
hanging up here. Good to see you, baby.
See you in years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
I'm 66 years old now, but I'm not without a certain nostalgia for the past. Maybe that's why I'm still on the road.
How you doing?
How you feeling?
Thank you. Good. Father. Pop? All right. Wow. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. How you feeling? How's your trip?
All right.
Perhaps we just wanted to prove we still had the magic, that we still had that bond that I think made us the best trio there ever was.
I'll do it. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you, man.
That generation of musicians seemed to have a closeness. They all believed in the same kind of music, and they all had the same intensity and the love for it. And anytime you get people of that generation together who played together, there's that camaraderie that you don't find in younger musicians today.
He wants it perfect, not good. He wants it perfect. He demands the same thing of himself, you know, which you can tolerate if he's going to put those same restrictions on himself. It's fine. What it's done for me is make a better musician out of me.
I'm going to do my best to play them both off the stand for that moment, you know. And they're both the same way. So that makes for great music. It's all healthy and it's all fun. It's not with anger, it's with love.
I'm, at worst, charged with being a fast piano player. That doesn't mean anything. It's how I articulate those notes that means something. And these guys articulated everything. I don't care what's happening out in the audience. I don't care what's happening backstage. This is all I'm involved with, and in my group.
I remember the tune, but I don't remember how it goes.
What's the tune?
Land of the Misty Giants.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
That's that, but I don't remember how it goes.
Da-dee-dee, da-da-da-da-da-da, da-dee-dee, da-da-da-da-da-da, da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, da-da-da-dee-doo.
I couldn't remember.
You haven't played that thing in years.
Yeah.
2 minutes, Oscar.
It was one for all. It was like the Musketeers. It was that kind of group.
I always get a bit frightened when I'm going to see him the next time, because by the law of human averages, one day he's going to come out, he ain't going to make it, you know. And I get a bit scared, because how can a man retain this standard and this command?
There's been a lot of hearsay about, oh, well, you know, he's got arthritis or his hands. It's not that bad, really. Before it gets that way, I'll walk away. As a kid, I used to watch people like Toscanini, Arthur Rubinstein, in his 90s. This man would go out and pulverize a piano. I say, how did you do that? They're way older than I am. And I came to the conclusion that as you get older, you think differently. I think this, that if any one of the three of us could not fulfill, not what was expected of us, but what we expected of ourselves, there wouldn't have been a concert.
Did you like it?
I wanted to prove something this summer. I wanted to prove that this trio hasn't changed.
It's called Nighttime. New composition.